The notary did not even blink. He just stamped it and took the cash. It is done. The money will be in the account by Friday. My mother's voice floated out from the kitchen, light and happy. I froze in the hallway and looked down at the paper shaking in my hands. Confirmation of power of attorney. It was an official notice from the county saying I had authorized her to sell my house yesterday. But yesterday, I was at work. I looked through the doorway. My sister, Bianca, was posing for a selfie in the mirror, wearing the vintage pearls I kept hidden in the back of my closet. They had not just stolen my jewelry. They had stolen my legal identity. I did not scream. I slid the letter back into its envelope, buried it in the stack of junk mail, and walked into the kitchen to smile at the woman who had just sold my future. I walked past the kitchen without breaking my stride. Bianca did not even look up from her phone. To them, I was just part of the furniture. Slightly less valuable than the antique credenza because the credenza did not work 12-hour shifts and come home smelling like antiseptic. I closed the door to my bedroom and leaned against the wood, letting the mask drop. My sanctuary looked more like a warehouse. Stacks of cardboard boxes lined the walls, blocking the view of the ocean. Fragile PR gift. The labels read. Bianca's failed influencer career took up 60% of my floor space because Vanessa insisted my room had better feng shui for storage. Last week, I slept on the living room sofa for 3 nights because Bianca needed my room for a closet tour video. My name is Elisa. I am 29 years old. I am the unit manager for the busiest emergency room in the state. I manage crises that would break most people. I coordinate trauma teams, handle grieving families, and make life or death decisions every single day. But in this house, I am just the help. The invisible checkbook. The spare. It was not always quiet resentment. 2 years ago, there was screaming. Vanessa sat at the kitchen table, mascara running down her face, shaking because a loan shark from Vegas was threatening to liquidate her assets, specifically her kneecaps. She owed $50,000. She begged me. She grabbed my hands and swore she was a victim of bad luck. I drained my savings. I pulled money from my retirement fund. I wired the cash to save her. She did not hug me. She did not say thank you. She wiped her eyes, checked her reflection in the mirror, and said, "It took you long enough. You know I have high blood pressure." That was the day the daughter in me died. They call this place the Azure Cliff Estate. They strut through the glass hallways like they built them. They constantly remind me that I live here by their grace, that I should be grateful they have not kicked me out. But there is a document in a safety deposit box downtown that tells a different story. My biological mother, the woman Vanessa refuses to speak about, bought this land 30 years ago. She put it in an irrevocable trust. The title transferred to me automatically the day I turned 25. I own every beam of steel, every pane of glass, and every inch of the marble floors they walk on. I never told them. I thought if I kept it a secret, I could protect them from their own worst instincts. I thought if I let them pretend to be the queens of the castle, they might finally be happy. I was wrong. Greed is a vacuum. It has no bottom. I looked at the boxes of cheap makeup and polyester clothes cluttering my room. I wanted to kick them over. I wanted to scream that I owned the roof over their heads. But I did not. I used a technique I learned during my psychiatric rotation. The gray rock method. When you deal with toxic people, you do not fight. You do not explain. You become a gray rock. Boring. Unresponsive. Uninteresting. You give them zero emotional fuel. When they insult you, you say okay. When they steal from you, you say I see. It makes them think you are stupid. It makes them think you are beaten. It makes them think you are safe to ignore. Vanessa and Bianca thought my silence was submission. They thought my lack of reaction was cowardice. They were so busy enjoying their power trip that they forgot to check if the gun they were holding was actually loaded. They did not know that while they were playing house, I was taking notes. And now, holding the evidence of their crime in my mind, I realized my silence wasn't a shield anymore. It was a trap. The next morning, the kitchen smelled of expensive espresso and desperation. Vanessa was sitting at the marble island, wearing a silk robe that cost more than my monthly student loan payment. Bianca was next to her, scrolling through her phone, ignoring the plate of untouched fruit in front of her. "Grab a coffee, Elisa," Vanessa said, not looking up from her iPad. "But use a travel mug. You smell like the hospital again. I do not want that antiseptic stench settling into the upholstery." I walked to the coffee maker, my movements slow and deliberate. "Okay," I said. Gray rock. Boring. Unoffensive. I poured my coffee and turned to leave, but Vanessa cleared her throat. "Actually, wait. Since you are here, I need you to sign something." She slid a thick stack of papers across the counter. It stopped right next to my hand. "The pool pump is acting up again," she said, waving a manicured hand. The repair company needs the owner's authorization to access the property while we are out today. Just sign the bottom so they can fix it. I looked at the stack. It was heavy for a repair authorization. I set my coffee down and picked up a pen. Sure. I flipped the first page. It was a standard liability waiver for a pool company I had never heard of. I flipped the second page. An invoice for filters. Then I turned to the third page. The header was different. The font was smaller. Quitclaim deed. It was a legal document transferring all rights, title, and interest of the property located at 4400 Azure Way from Elisa Vance to Vanessa Vance. Buried in a stack of pool maintenance forms, sandwiched between a liability waiver and a receipt, was the theft of my entire inheritance. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my face remained blank. If I reacted now, if I screamed or called them out, they would know the game was up. They would find another way. Something messier. Something harder to track. I needed them to think I was stupid. I needed them to think I was just a bureaucratic annoyance, not an enemy. I tapped the paper with the pen. Mom, they got the zip code wrong on this one, I said, my voice flat. It says 90210. That is Beverly Hills. We are in Malibu. Vanessa froze. Her eyes snapped to the paper, then to me. What? Who cares? Just sign it. I cannot, I said, putting the pen down. If the address is wrong, the liability waiver is void. If the pool guy gets hurt, we get sued. You know how sticklers insurance companies are. It is a typo. Vanessa's voice rose an octave. She stood up, the silk robe swishing around her legs. Just sign the damn paper, Elisa. Stop trying to be smart. You are a nurse, not a lawyer. I cannot sign a document with errors, I repeated, channeling every ounce of boredom I could muster. Get them to reprint it with the right zip code, and I will sign it tonight. I picked up my bag and turned to go. You useless, ungrateful little parasite. The shriek tore through the kitchen. I turned back just in time to see Vanessa lunging across the island. Her hand connected with my cheek. A sharp, stinging crack that echoed off the glass walls. My head snapped to the side. My cheek burned like fire. Bianca gasped, looking up from her phone, her eyes wide. But she did not move. She did not say a word. She just watched, waiting to see who would win. I tasted copper in my mouth. I slowly turned my head back to face my mother. Her chest was heaving, her face flushed with a mixture of rage and panic. You live here because I allow it, she hissed, leaning over the counter, her breath smelling of coffee and mint. You are the background noise of this family, Elisa. When I tell you to sign something, you sign it. You do not correct your betters. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had given birth to me, who had stolen from me, and who had just assaulted me because I would not let her rob me blind. Okay, I said softly. I will sign it when it is corrected. I walked out the door. I did not slam it. I did not run. I walked to my car, got in, and locked the doors. Only then did I touch my cheek. It was throbbing. I looked at my face in the rearview mirror. A red handprint was already blooming on my skin. I pulled out my phone and took a photo. Time-stamped. Geotagged. They wanted a signature? Fine. I would give them one. But it would not be on a deed. That slap was the final seal on their warrant. They had crossed the line from fraud to violence. I put the car in gear and drove to the hospital. I had a 12-hour shift ahead of me. And while I was saving lives, they would be digging their own graves. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in self-destruction, and I had a front-row seat. I spent my breaks at the hospital huddled in the staff lounge, monitoring the family iPad. Bianca had carelessly left, logged in on our shared cloud account. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. Except the car was made of stolen money and the passengers were cheering. First came the notification from the bank. A wire transfer of $250,000. The hard money loan. They had used the forged power of attorney to secure a high-interest bridge loan against the house's equity. In their minds, this was free money, an advance on the millions they would get once the sale went through. In reality, it was a debt they were personally liable for, secured by a document that was a felony to produce. Then came the spending. I watched the transactions roll in real time. A $5,000 down payment on a lease for a Range Rover. $3,000 at a designer boutique. A first-class trip to Cabo for Bianca and her content team. It was nauseating. They were burning through $250,000 like it was kindling. But then I saw the bigger transactions. The ones they did not post on Instagram. $150,000 wired to Global Debt Solutions. $50,000 to an offshore gaming site. I sat back in my chair, the stark hospital lighting humming above me. They were not just partying. They were drowning. Vanessa's gambling debts were far worse than I had imagined. The debt consolidation transfer was a desperate attempt to pay off the loan sharks before they came collecting again. They had not sold the house to get rich. They were selling it to stay alive. And that was the trap. This is the sunk cost fallacy in action. People will continue a behavior or endeavor as a result of previously invested resources, time, money, or effort, even if the current costs outweigh the benefits. Vanessa and Bianca had already committed a crime to get the loan. They had already spent the money. Now, they had to sell the house. If the sale fell through, they would not just be broke, they would be in debt to a hard money lender who did not play nice. And they would have zero assets to cover it. The loan was not a lifeline. It was an anchor. And they had just tied it around their own ankles. Elisa? I looked up. Dr. Chen was standing in the doorway, holding a chart. You okay? You have been staring at that iPad for 10 minutes. I am fine, I said, locking the screen. Just checking on my family. They are going through some changes. Well, we need you in Bay 4. Multi-vehicle collision coming in 5. On my way. I stood up and smoothed my scrubs. I felt a strange sense of calm. I did not need to intervene. I did not need to stop them. Every dollar they spent was another shovel of dirt on their grave. They thought they were living the high life, but they were just running up a tab they could never pay. And when the bill finally came due, I would be the only one holding the receipt. I walked out to the ambulance bay, ready to save strangers, while letting my own family destroy themselves. Tuesday came, the day on the forged power of attorney. The document Vanessa had paid a crooked notary to backdate claimed I had signed it in his office at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. At 1:58, the red phone at the nurse's station rang. Inbound. Male, 42. Cardiac arrest. CPR in progress. ETA. 2 minutes. I grabbed the receiver. Trauma 1 is open. Let's move. The doors burst open. The paramedics rushed in. A blur of motion and urgency. I stepped forward, my voice calm and commanding. I will take lead. Dr. Chen. Airway. Sarah. Compressions. Let's go. For 45 minutes, I focused only on the patient, his pulse, oxygen levels, and the clock. I accessed the drug locker, signed digital charts every 5 minutes, and worked under security cameras that recorded everything. When we got a pulse back, I finalized the log. Elisa Vance. Unit Manager. Shift. 0700 to 1900. I printed it, and had the attending countersign. While my mother claimed I was at a notary signing away my inheritance, I had created an airtight alibi time-stamped, witnessed, and recorded. I placed the log in my bag beside the original deed. The war was about to end. At Thornton and Partners, the receptionist tried to stop me. I told her my mother was selling my house with a forged signature and warned her she would be named in the lawsuit if she blocked me. She buzzed me in. I entered the conference room unannounced. Vanessa froze. The developer and lawyer looked up. I introduced myself as the homeowner. They claimed my mother had power of attorney. I told them it was forged. I laid out the evidence. The fake document, the hospital access log proving I was in the trauma bay at 1:58, and security footage showing me performing CPR at 2 o'clock, the exact time of the alleged signing. I told the developer that if he proceeded, he would be knowingly purchasing stolen property. The room went silent. The deal collapsed immediately. He demanded his $250,000 deposit back or he would call the police. Vanessa panicked and begged me to cover the loss using my trust. I refused. I told her she had committed forgery, wire fraud, and grand theft in prison was the outcome. I reminded her who she had been to me. Then I left. Sirens were already approaching as I walked out. 30 days later, the house is quiet. The ocean is in view. The air smells clean. I finally understand the truth. Silence was never weakness. It was strategy. They called me the help. Now I am the owner. And the view is perfect.